Next, we're going to talk about the influence of reference groups. So, a reference group is just a group of people, often smaller, that influences one's behavior. And there's different types of reference groups. This will help us understand their influence. There's direct, where we have face to face membership. They can be primary and they can be secondary in terms of importance and how often you interact with them. But your friends, your peers, they're a primary group. If you play on a team or where you work, that might be another primary one. Your family is a primary one. Secondary ones might be people in your classes that you see, hey, once or twice a week, but you don't necessarily interact a lot with them. And then also we can think of non-membership, meaning we don't really belong to this group, but they may be aspirational. We want to belong to that group in the future. I want to be a successful business person. I coach high school football. Maybe I want someday want to be a college coach or professional coach. And there's also groups that we want to avoid. We don't want to be like we're motivated. I don't want to be a college dropout. I don't want to be unsuccessful and so forth. So they have an influence us. But there are smaller groups, so you can kind of think of like peer pressure is one of the ways you can think about reference group influence. And what we're going to look at is the three different types of influence reference groups can have. So the first one's the idea of information. And we tend to get our information from our reference groups. You might ask me about marketing, but you're certainly not going to ask me about what's going on campus on a weekend where parties are or what other people are doing. And back in the day, that was made things very insular, right? Because who do we hang out with? People who are a lot like us, who hold a lot of the same views. So the only way for revolutionary ideas to get passed on to large groups of people is by different types of reference groups getting together and communicating, which they weren't likely to do anyway. So you can think about it. What's been the impact of social media? Well, in my opinion, social media has really sped up the rate of change, social change, cultural change, because now that information is accessible to almost everybody. And something can happen in one part of the globe, somebody takes a video, some pictures, and then all of a sudden it's gone viral and it has a larger impact. So things change a lot faster. So, again, this is still true, but kind of back in the day, marketers often would try to recruit opinion leaders. So within a group of your friends, let's say if you're one of your primary reference groups, people often have certain areas of expertise, or at least they're going to tell you that they're experts. And so they're sought out by others or like to give their opinions. Like if you need a new laptop, you might ask somebody, hey, which one should I get? Especially if you're not going to buy, a MacBook. You're going to buy a Windows one. And so they can have a big influence on potential buyers, but the problem is they're hard to identify. So let's say, Ford was going to go around to the local colleges and have their local dealers bring a bunch of cars on campus for seniors and juniors to test drive for no charge, right? Makes sense because they're going to, graduate soon, get jobs, and probably buy a new car. Well, and you want to make sure that the opinion leaders drive them. Well, who are the opinion leaders on a college campus like AIC? Or even a bigger campus like UMass or UConn? It's hard to say. Is it athletes? Is it people in student government? Is it presidents and social, vice presidents or whatever it would call for sororities and fraternities? They're really hard to identify. All right? And of course, that's all changed nowadays. Though opinion leaders are still there. Now we call them influencers, brand ambassadors, or brand advocates. And, we're always looking to get consumer generated marketing through them and marketing materials. and stuff, right? So you can see the little text on the side there. So 40% of Gen Z buy based on influencers. Well, it's only 26% for everyone else. And I think actually the 26% is pretty high given that, I didn't grow up with influencers and so forth. All right. So a lot of marketing has become, how do you get other people to say good things about your brand? All right. That's what influencers do. Obviously, they make a lot of money doing that. But there's also people who don't get paid for that, but write good reviews, run review sites, tweet on X and do all that stuff. So it's about getting customers to produce content. And how did this all really get started? Well, in the lower right-hand corner, you see a mom. And it was mommy blogs. Women who were stay-at-home moms who had children, internet, and wanted something to do, maybe entrepreneurial, though they didn't realize it at the time. They would do blogs and video blogs and blog about, hey, all the tips and hacks of raising children and preparing food and having a busy schedule and working and balancing everything. And marketers, they would review products, and marketers started to recognize them because they had, as a collective, millions of viewers visiting their blogs. So they started to send them products. And then they learned eventually how to monetize it. And that really kicked everything off. So, obviously younger people are focused a lot on social media, TikTok, Instagram, not so much Facebook anymore, and so forth. But blogging is huge, in the internet in terms of disseminating information and influencing people. So we tend to get our information from people who we feel are like us or ones that we want to belong to, right? Those aspirational groups. Okay, so what's another influence? So I'm going to ask this question, and I hope I don't offend anybody or make anybody get sick. But, in class, nobody does it. But if you take a drive somewhere, a long drive, and you're looking around, perhaps maybe you're not driving, you'll see somebody picking their nose in their car. Why do they do it? Why do they pick their nose when they're driving? I always thought it was because they're hungry. But, all right. So the next influence is normative or utilitarian. So why do they pick their nose? Because they think nobody can see them, just because they're in their own vehicle. So it's the idea that it's basically peer pressure, right? That people change their behavior to fit group norms, to retain or gain status. All right? And, when we deal with somebody who's not part of our group, all right, especially when there's more of us than them, we tend to try to force them to, to conform to our group norms, all right, what we're all about. Or, we're rude to them. They face sanctions. We kick them out. We make fun of them. We laugh at them. Maybe we punch them and beat them up, right? I always found that peer pressure was greatest in middle school, but it really never ever goes away. All right? So, in marketing, all right, this is a powerful force. All right? Now, it's not effective, all right? Or it's most effective, we can look at it both ways. Hey, when the behavior is public, meaning that when other people can see it. You can pick your nose behind closed doors and nobody knows. But when it's in public, how you look, how you act, what you drink, all that kind of stuff is, susceptible to normative or utilitarian. Same thing, peer pressure. And the reward or punishment, the sanction, has to be meaningful. Like if you don't care what other people think, then this stuff's not going to work. All right? But if you do care what your friends think about you, what the other person thinks about you, right? Then you're more likely to conform. Okay, and when you meet people who are different, you're more likely to try to make them conform, or you're just going to disregard them. So, much of grooming products and things like that, to do with how we look and how we're perceived, use this idea in their advertising. So we're going to look at 2 ads that do it, all right? Old Spice, or 3 ads, actually, Old Spice, Captain Morgan, and Axe. Here's the Old Spice ad, and actually, in the advertising industry, it won several awards.
Hello, ladies. How are you? Fantastic. Does your man look like me? No. Can he smell like me? Yes. Should he use Old Spice body wash? I don't know. Do you like the smell of adventure? Do you want a man who smells like he can bake you a gourmet cake in the dream kitchen he built for you with his own hands? Of course you do. Swan dive into the best night of your life. So, ladies, should your man smell like an Old Spice man? You tell me.
I may not be able to look like him, but if I use Old Spice, I can smell like him. And, my wife, girlfriend, other women are going to think more highly of me. Okay, so now we're going to look at Captain Morgan.
Captain.
Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain.
Just Dave, actually.
Captain Dave. Captain!
So Dave doesn't have the elevated status of being a captain. But when he orders Captain Morgan, then he gets his instant respect. Now, as you probably can tell, a lot of ads that deal with normative reference group influence, they're funny. Because if you're too serious, it makes people uncomfortable, or they're going to be more likely to deny that that's important to them or not. And next we're going to look at Axe. And Axe was one of the original body sprays that came out, along with Tag and some other ones. And they blew all their competitors away with this type of advertising.
New Axe Apollo. Join now at axeapollo.com for your chance to go to space.
So the Axe ads were silly, but they featured how their spray made men, boys really, teenagers, irresistible to women. And I can remember my teenage boys using it. And I would say, stop, you put way too much on. And they say, Dad, you don't know anything. You're stupid.